Engelbach, and I'll moderate today's session. For those of you who don't know what CDIA is, I'd like to just quickly give an introduction. CDIA is the Cities Development Initiative for Asia, and it's a trust fund managed by the Asian Development Bank. And what they do is they help secondary cities in Asia and the Pacific prepare bankable infrastructure investment projects that increase livability and sustainability for the people in those cities. So today we're having a dialogue called Live Smarter, Not Harder. And this is a chance for CDIA to discuss some of their views on this current public health crisis and how it's reshaping the cities of tomorrow and the pivotal role that digital technology will play in rebuilding cities and their economies. This morning, two CDIA urban development experts have joined us to talk a little bit about how they can support governments in creating smart and livable cities in the post-pandemic era. And at the end of the webinar, we're going to have a quick Q&A session where you'll be able to ask some questions to our guest speakers. So make sure you stay until the end. So now that the intro is out of the way, I'd like to welcome Lara Arjan. She's Urban Development Specialist of ADB and CDIA Project Officer. And Chee Rono, she's Urban Development Specialist as well from CDIA. And they're both here to give us some insights on this topic. So Lara, Chee, good morning. And I'd like you to go ahead and introduce yourselves. Say hi to everyone.
Oh, well, you've already said everything that has to be said about me, but I'm Urban Development Specialist. I work for the Asian Development Bank in their Sustainable Development and Climate Change department, if you like, and I am in the urban sector group. We provide advisory services to the bank, but we also manage trust funds. And one of the trust funds that is under my own portfolio is the CDIA trust fund. So I am helping manage CDIA on behalf of ADB. And I work with Chee and the CDIA team, as you said, to prepare bankable infrastructure projects for downstream funding. And downstream funding can be any funder, not necessarily ADB only. So I'm going to hand it over to Chee right now.
Thanks, Lara, and thanks, Ben. Hi, everyone who have dialed in for the call. So I think everything that needs to be said about CDIA has been said. I work with them as an urban development specialist, and I'm really glad to be part of this pilot episode of the Urban Breakfast series we are doing for this month. Although I was just mentioning earlier, strictly speaking, it's after lunch where I am. So it's nearly 2 p.m. here in Australia. But this platform, CDIA platform, we are starting today is where we hope to engage with partners in a conversation about various topics relevant to urban development. And I think just to set the scene, I think the key word here is conversation. We'd like to really hear from the audience as much as you would like to hear from us, because we're still very much interested to reach out and see how we can continue partnerships and to provide technical assistance to cities across Asia and the Pacific, especially and despite of the global pandemic we are all grappling with here. So good morning to everyone.
Nice. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started with our first topic. So the first thing we want to talk about today is some of the biggest challenges that face cities when the pandemic first hit earlier this year. We'll go ahead and start with Lara. Lara, you have a lot of urban development experience with many different organizations. So could you offer some of your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, it was obvious that cities had to be very nimble and to provide basic services. I mean, when the pandemic first hit, it was how do we provide continuous and quality urban services? So when you look at urban services, those could have been, they are water, sanitation, and then there was also some cities, grappled with electricity, transit, which is very important. These are, as an urban planner, what I would call the circulatory systems of cities. So it's like their circulation. that was very, very important at the very beginning, because you need to ensure a basic level of services. Of course, there's also health and education, but the challenge, I guess, was more of a governance challenge, because these services are not necessarily, in many countries, almost all countries, are not provided by the city uniquely. They have to be provided through coordinating with other different levels of government, and sometimes the private sector in some areas. So there had to be, in all countries, in all cities, a sort of a break in silos and saying, listen, we need to get this done. What do we need? And people, I mean, countries came together, cities came together to provide this. So it was a massive test for governance as much as a massive test for service provision. And then if you look at the developing countries, I guess what came in sharp relief was that, and also developed countries to a certain extent, there were areas that were no man's land. So in developed countries, it was homelessness. It's always been a fight. Is it a municipal mandate, or is it a federal mandate, or is it, you know, a national mandate? And all of a sudden, cities had to do something about homeless populations. Whereas in developing countries, you do have whole informal settlements that nobody wanted to own before. And then what do we do, and how do we provide services for them? And that was also where, I guess, developing countries grappled most, especially in terms of water sanitation, because hygiene is key in fighting this pandemic.
Interesting. Yeah, thank you for that, Lara. I'd like to go ahead and move to another question. This one will be for Chee. Chee, so you were very involved in a recent project in Lao PDR after the pandemic. So I think you might be the right person to answer this question. In your experience, how has this pandemic catalyzed the use of digital technologies as a means to speed up socioeconomic recovery?
Oh, my personal experience, well, I guess let me start by saying that my experience with the pandemic is anything but ordinary. Like I said earlier, I flew from Manila to Adelaide at the height of the lockdown measures being put in place. So this was mid-March. Booked my flight out on the same night. The president announced a ban on international flights. And in a matter of 1 to 2 days, I was on board a full flight to Australia, doing my 2-week quarantine in a hotel, way before like the government has mandated required overseas travelers to isolate in hotels rather than their place of residence. So that's the context. I'm just a preamble. So while in quarantine, I guess one of the first things I noticed was how the government was already making use of not exactly digital technologies, but making use of data, appropriate use of data for contact tracing. Yeah, forget about the sophisticated like contact tracing app that was, eventually came out from, each governments would have that. But at that time, because cities, I think, and governments in general need to rapidly respond to the pandemic, like this was the time where no one really knew what was happening. Things changed by the day and then also by the hour eventually. So it was, but I noticed that there was already this available data was used by the government of Australia. And this was in the form of a simple notification in the SA Health website on whether, because I'm obviously I come from overseas, so I'm vulnerable and I could be a potential carrier of the virus, right? So they've used some public available data to kind of notify if you have been a close contact of a known and confirmed COVID case. So I was there monitoring, quarantine monitoring the SA Health website on a daily basis. And I could see information getting updated on flights into Adelaide and specific details on how like flight passengers could be potentially affected by a positive case. So they would have information like Rose XYZ of flight 123 is a close contact of a positive COVID case. So people would generally know how to respond to it. And this is just, based out of a published information on a website. So I guess from that observation and experience alone, I could already see that the priority of the government, and rightly so, is really about controlling the spread of the pandemic. So that is how, any talk about socio-economic recovery has to come from. If you are confident enough that you are able to control the virus. So just a simple method to the madness at that time, I think was a very good starting point for the government. And it's actually a low-tech approach. Like I said, it's just available data and making use of this information towards a specific goal, and clearly communicating to the public on what to do if you are considered a close contact of a known case. Of course, this is combined with many other measures, but controlling the spread was the key, I think. And for us here, South Australia in general has been COVID-free for months, and it's very much on its way to socio-economic recovery. So it doesn't really have to be like sophisticated digital technologies. I mean, it's not the solution to socioeconomic recovery. It's really about combining approaches and measures and ensuring that the urban scene is ready for gathering of people, etc. Because of they're free of the concern of having being a part of the pandemic statistics.
Interesting. Yeah, it's very good that they were able to use this tech to keep everybody safe down there. So I'm glad that you're staying safe right now. Lara, let's go to a question for you. In this next section, we want to talk about the strength of partnerships in overcoming the development challenges from this pandemic. I was curious if you could tell us a little bit about how you and CDIA have been able to support your partner cities throughout the pandemic.
I mean, like everybody, the pandemic hit, and then our work is very field oriented, and we are mostly present in the field. CDIA usually commissions studies on behalf of cities, and we do commission consultants. And the pandemic hit, we had consultants who were stuck in certain countries, consultants who were scrambling to go out. And it started and we weren't really sure how to continue. So that was the ongoing project for CDIA. So we managed to take people out of certain countries. There are some international consultants who decided to stay on. And the thrust of the work there was a distribution between international and national consultants, but now the thrust of the work is more leaning towards the national consultants in countries. And we, of course, monitor to make sure it's safe for them. And if it's safe, they do face-to-face work. But if it's not safe, we reverted to not necessarily very digital, but, kind of like online surveys, webinars and workshops that would have normally been carried face-to-face over Zoom and other platforms like everybody else. Since we're not constructing anything, we're not monitoring anything, right? And then sort of data collection, and that's how we did it. And a big part of CDIA's work is meeting with cities and consulting with them on what they would like to do. And that work also, we ensured continuation through online meetings, if you want, with cities, and sort of data collection in other ways. That is what we're doing right now. So I guess, like everybody else, we adopted a wait and see, but we committed totally to continue the work of CDIA. There was no stop because of the pandemic. It was just, we kind of used different ways to reach to the same. So if we needed to meet with government officials, it would be online. Translation was sometimes an issue, but now you can do translations and and you could do sort of simultaneous translation when you're online. So things are evolving very quickly, and we took full advantage of it. They were places where their internet connection wasn't very, very, very strong. So we respected the national guidelines for social distancing, but we still had a room full of people with the sort of maximum amount of people. And we had a sort of, because internet connection would have been better at a certain hotel or at a certain place, and we used that to broadcast the meeting. I mean, so far it hasn't been ideal, but we're getting the information we need for our studies, and we're taking a bit longer, but we're getting things delivered.
Yeah, just to add to that as well, the support to partner cities, like Lara said, continued, and we tried our best to adopt. I think everyone had to. It was a matter of whether, how long will this pandemic last? Can we defer some of the activities? So there are many, depending on the context and cities where we work with. Some we even had to fully suspend work because we can afford some time to do that and to regroup and re-strategize. But as we slowly realize, and I think everyone we're all on the same page on this because of the uncertain times that, this is not going away anytime soon. Then we do need to have like a new way of working, if you will, where it's all online based. Of course, working with developing countries and cities, the challenge always is about internet connectivity, access to technology, and all just really evolution. You evolve with the work depending based on this new normal. So but it has been going well. Like Lara said, some had taken longer than ideal, but it is how it is, especially when you consider the type of work we do in CDIA is very much consultative. So we do a lot of stakeholder engagements, and which is quite difficult to do when you do remote work across varied time zones. Sometimes when you have when you have to bring in international experts into the discussion as well. So but I think these are all like practical difficulties and challenges that everyone had faced in this field. But yeah, we're pushing on, and we're in fact even with the current portfolio we are also building new ones for the coming years. So the work of CDIA continues.
Very nice. Thank you for that, Chee. So I kind of want to focus a little bit, if we can, about maybe the bright side of this situation that we all find ourselves in terms of being forced to find workarounds to keep your development projects and work going. Would you say that that there's been any positive effects to the pandemic and lockdown? Were there any positive effects that the pandemic had on infrastructure and development in Asian cities? Have you noticed anything like that?
To me, your
Go ahead,
Oh, sorry.
Lara.
Yeah, I was asking Chee. But Laura, we'd be happy to hear your thoughts as well.
no worries.
So I guess here in the context of Australia, and probably I think also it's a reflection of some other cities. I know that in the beginning of the pandemic, because people are afraid of public transportation, there was a noted increase in bicycle purchases and use. So you have active mobility happening in the urban scene more than ever before. And then I guess some of the positive ones as far as smart solutions are involved would be the shift to like cashless transactions, especially in public transport. So like what happened here was the bus, all of the bus, like you can't use the public transport without the metro card, and before you can do that, you have an option to buy straight from the bus driver or use the metro card, but just overnight it all, everything shifted to cashless payment. So I think that accelerated phase of adoption is also a positive side to it. Of course, it is in the context of Australia, where adoption is to technology is high, and there could be challenges if you adopt the same sort of measure in developing cities, especially like I know for Metro Manila, for instance, they've tried that with Beep. And there are issues of affordability, of access, etc. So it wasn't as smooth as how it happened here. Some of the things that the bright side as well is, I guess there's this thing called tactical urbanism. So it's just some real low cost temporary changes that are done in urban in key points in the cities to improve, because people are basically afraid of other people. That's how it is this year. So like the city councils would have like even signs just saying the city streets miss your feet, something like that. So it's just like having like a sense of belongingness or a sense of place in a city. I think goes a long way in trying to revive this just the city life or streetscape that we are used to before the pandemic happened.
Very nice. Thank you for that, Chee. Lara, did you have anything to add to that?
No, but I mean, in general, I think the bright side is green. I think living in Manila, I can speak to my experience, and I guess it's the same in many cities we work in. The less pollution, not the less traffic, because you don't need to go certain places, and you figure out that just a meeting over a digital platform would suffice. That kind of changed a lot, removed much of the congestion in the city. We're switching to active mobility. A lot of cities have introduced bike lanes because the public transit was not very sufficient at the beginning, and it could not really cope with the changes that were supposed to be done post-COVID to ensure safe transport. So I think that for me was a big highlight. You go out, you can breathe, there's less pollution, and people kind of figured out that we can all work from home, or not all jobs need to go to the office. So, and this is something that has been universal. Whether it continues or not, that's another question. So I think that's and the other silver lining, I guess, and that's it pertains a lot to the work at CDIA, and a lot of the work we do at ADB is that, do we really have to travel for everything this much? Can we be efficient with our meetings? I can't be traveling, let's say, to Uzbekistan to do, a series of meetings that I can just conclude online and still be as efficient. And, some of our colleagues are saying it's even more efficient because everybody's there. There are no, hiccups in the process. So I think for me, that's the bright side. And the other thing is that, we see that with our partner cities and DMCs. They're thinking of things that they didn't think before because, it won't happen. So they're asking us for things as like medical waste management, other issues that were really hard to put on the table. But right now, they've become their priorities instead of being put on the back burner.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Lara. I just wanted to quickly remind everybody who's watching, if you have any questions for Chee and or Lara, go ahead and put them in the chat or in the Q&A section. You'll see a little Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen. And then what we can do is grab those questions and we'll be able to present them to Chee and Lara at the Q&A section at the end. So if you have a question, right there in the Q&A box. Okay, let's go on to another question for you and Chee and Lara. I want to focus on crystal balling into the future. And so what that means is, I guess I kind of want to find out from both of you, is if you have any advice for any city officials or any urban developments or any people interested in this topic right now who are a bit stressed or worried about how they will adapt to the new normal. Is there any advice that you can offer them when it comes to the future? I guess we'll start with, we'll start with Lara. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that pandemics have happened a lot and they have spurred, humans have short memories usually. Some spurred very good developments. So our current sanitation system was built after the cholera outbreak in the UK. So they are bright sides and there are things that you can jump on and some things will return back to the normal. But I think it is an opportunity to sort of relook at our development paradigms, the way our economy runs, and question everything. It seems overwhelming, but I think the whole world is going towards a new iteration of what they want their future to be. In general, the general tendency in the world is right now going towards green and resilient. And the way I look at digital technologies, they are things that can help us catalyze these solutions. For instance, Paris is going to the 15-minute city where you work, you play, and you live within 15 minutes of everything. And with digital solutions, this is good because if your office is like 50 miles away, you can still work from home and be within that 15-minute bubble of everything. So that enhances the quality of life of inhabitants. So I think we're looking towards more equitable, hopefully as well, because we have been alerted to the struggle of informal settlers, and we know how important they are to our economies. So a lot of cities right now will be looking more and more towards involving informal settlers. So I think my message is, and the future is going to be different. The future is going to be greener. But there is a whole array of digital solutions that you can be using that would help achieve those objectives very quickly. For instance, if you're thinking of doing more active transport because it's more green, and this is where the general tendency is, and you do realize how bad your traffic is after this pandemic, there's a whole sort of slew of networks and apps. If you want to sort of provide more water in your cities, there's a whole digital solutions. There's a whole wide range of digital solutions that would help you reduce non-revenue water and leakage and monitor your network better. They're there and they're also affordable and also used before. And if I may do some shameless promotion here, is that the challenge has always been that, cities failed to provide feasibility studies to demonstrate to funders that, these solutions work and these solutions are feasible, and cities can take advantage of trust funds like CDIA to prepare these projects that are bankable and make a convincing argument to downstream lenders in terms of using these digital solutions to enable them to build more green and resilient economies in the future, which in my opinion is the way the majority of the world is going. And I hate to say that Asia is a little bit behind. The latest report, there's been a few reports that came out where green recovery isn't figuring that much in Asian recovery, but around the world, that is the trend. And I'm sure that Asian countries will jump on this bandwagon very soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Lara. Chee, we're about to move to the Q&A section, but I wanted to quickly give you a second to answer this question if you had anything to say as well.
Yeah, well, just a short one, I suppose. Like crystal balling, maybe in the near future, it really is about bringing people back into the streets. Right now, with the pandemic and the lockdown, I mean, it's just, I guess it's normal that people are at home, making use of online delivery services, etc., and not really going out. But the urban fabric itself has changed because streets are empty in all the urban centers. So digital solutions can maybe provide, I can see that happening here, because like I said, we've all come back to, out on the streets already. But like contact tracing is still very much a priority for the government, and you have like things like a digital concierge, for instance, being used here, where you kind of need to already like pre-plan everything and make sure that you have a space for everything in that urban sphere. And when you go out and dine, and people and governments have encouraged people to do that, because you have to support businesses, you have to keep the economy running. You get like a QR code where you just pop in and make sure that you're listed in that in that place, like restaurants, whether it's store or restaurant, etc. So I still think it's very important that the pandemic is controlled, so that we can all go back to the city life as we know it, and maybe even build back better kind of city life. Like I fully support the 15-minute neighborhood, where you have everything is within reach, work, play, and but you still need the city life in terms of like creativity and entrepreneurship, etc. So hopefully we get that back after we take control of the whole pandemic.
Awesome. Thank you, Chee. Okay, so we have several questions from some of the attendees, and we'd like to go ahead and present them to you, Chee and Lara. So our first question right here is from Avalyn, and she is from Cagayan de Oro in the Philippines. Her question is, do you have any active transport initiatives now for the Philippines, one that would work in her city? So I'm not sure which one of you would want to grab this question and run with it, but
I'm just, we don't have any initiatives right now. CDIA does not have any initiatives right now going on in the Philippines. We cover a very wide range of countries all over the Asian Pacific. But we're open to any active transport initiative that can be suggested by a city, and then CDIA will help your city prepare that initiative and help you link it to downstream financing later on. So this is what we do, and if there is interest, I'm sure that this is in line with what we stand for and is in line with our mandate. So yeah, if you need to contact us later on, we're here.
Yeah, and if they need to contact you, what is the website that they can access?
I'm going to put Chee on the spot right now. So do you have it? Yeah, I bet you do, right?
They're applying for a technical assistance from CDIA. So typically it's a bespoke technical assistance, we call it, because it really is up to the we respond to the pressing urban challenges of each cities, and so we contextualize all our technical assistance. It's all on an application basis, but yeah, it's the website is www.cdia.asia, and so historically our portfolio has always covered, well, mostly wastewater management. So urban infrastructure on wastewater management. Urban transport is the second biggest in our portfolio, in fact, and we would very much like to see more of the bikeways, cycleways, public transport initiatives there. The third one would be on water supply projects. The fourth is on solid waste management, and the fifth is around, I think, flood and drainage management. So we cover these. These are usually the high priority urban investments that our partner cities identify.
Great.
I just put in an email address for Evelyn in the chat box, and I see that some of our attendees also got very excited and Googled it and put it in. So thank you.
Yeah. Apply for support. There's a link in the chat box. So if you need more information, there it is. Great. Let's move on to another question. So this question is from Lisa. And Lisa's question is, how can CDIA help foster a green recovery, especially in a way that addresses the climate crisis? Chee, you look excited about that one. Would you like to?
Yeah, I'd like to say an example.
No, just because this year, when we kind of had a downtime in terms of project implementation, we also were able to use that time to really think about the strategy and where we want to focus moving forward. And one of the key areas really is about climate resilience for all city urban projects, and yeah, we've strengthened some of the climate risk screening tools that we have, and we are in fact waiting for an opportunity for a new projects to come in, so that we can employ these tools that we have put time in during while everyone was with the everyone was in lockdown basically, and we were all like just in our own homes, but very much looking towards the future and towards green recovery, and making sure that cities are equipped with, in terms of our project design, with the climate risks that they are facing.
Awesome.
I would
Great.
like to just add, if possible, and just very quickly, is that I think the beauty of CDIA is that it's a project preparation facility, and I stress preparation. It's not like an afterthought during implementation and then you think, okay, how can we green this project? So the beauty is that these considerations can be incorporated from the get-go and can be also accounted for in terms of their feasibility and in terms of their benefits before going to the preparation, the design phase and the implementation phase.
Okay. Great. Let's go to a question from Christopher. Christopher asks, how can cities and countries strengthen their digital economy post-COVID-19? And what are the opportunities and challenges in embracing this digital transformation?
Right.
It's a big question.
I don't know, it's, should I take it?
Sure, go ahead.
As we've seen, fintech and sort of digital solutions for finance and digital economy have been spearheaded and jump-started in many areas because of COVID. There were platforms there and people were reluctant. I mean, I'm one of them. I would never use MayaPay or Gcash or whatever it was because I just did not trust it. So I think as cities, it's already like the demand is rising right now, which is fantastic. A little word of caution, I'm an urban planner. I am not a digital economy expert, but from what I know is that the challenges I would think would be the death of your main street, the death of your mom and pop store you go to walking to. Will you go back if COVID is over and the new normal is installed? Would you still go and help the cafe down the street? because if you're getting things delivered to your house, you're kind of depriving business in those areas. So I think it's just finding that right balance, and also encouraging people, as Chee said, to go back to the street, because that is the dynamic of local economy. I think that challenge is kind of addressed because I believe in human nature as well. We like to see people face to face, but still, that cashless, that cashless aspect will be very prominent because people will think it's safer and easier. And most people right now, a lot of people have those apps. I think it was in the Philippines, I saw that it was a big thing in terms of remittance to families because you couldn't go to Western Union or you couldn't do whatever. So I was able to, during lockdown, my helper was in her area and I could not reach her, but I had to still pay her. So I had to revert to these. She was able to do it, which was really, to me, good because people sometimes are reluctant to use banks because they don't trust them, whatever. So it's just built up the trust. So I think that there are many avenues of this development, but I think the challenges remain privacy and increasing resilience in terms of security. People worry about privacy and increasing being more vulnerable to cyber attacks and what have you. So I think this challenge is coming up and this needs to be addressed. In terms of opportunities, the other thing was, I think there would be a lot of places when they started these solutions started just to pay a bus. I think with time and in the future, the biggest opportunity is that how can you get a sort of digital infrastructure that will enable you do multiple things, not only pay for your bus with your beep card, but use your beep card to pay for your groceries, use your beep card to use for everything else. But this comes back to the question of privacy. Not all people want a third party to know what they're up to. And this is always going to be the hindrance, and this can be always resolved by putting in place good data governance measures. And it's been a debate in many countries. There are early adopters and they are very, very late adopters. And that would depend on the political maturity and the democratic maturity in each country, with countries that are more democratically mature being more reluctant to adopt these solutions. So I don't think the challenges come from the inability of the technology to do something. The challenges mainly come from all the governance and security issues surrounding these solutions. I'm done. Over.
Thank you for that, Lara. So we are actually running a little short on time, so I want to quickly jump to the last few questions here. We have one more. This question came in from the registration form earlier. So somebody asked, when the borders eventually reopen, what are the first steps that CDIA will take when the development experts are able to get back into the field? Chee, do you want to take this one?
I guess Chee has spent a lot of time visualizing what's going to happen, so I'm going to leave it to her.
Can't wait.
Scenarios.
We're all excited for you.
It's really not just about borders opening. It's also about the measures that are, the prerequisites for traveling. Yesterday, I was in a roundtable discussion with PATA, the Travel Association, and they were saying it's 95% of travel reduction in travel this year was noted. So that's a lot of travels that are deferred for the year, and I don't see anyone really jumping in the chance of doing international travel, especially with your quarantine restrictions. If you have the time, then maybe you could. But I think we've seen some of the good takeaways from remote work. like some works. So some of the strategy that was employed works, and we are seeing a lot of the blended approach in the future, where you could bring in someone remotely potentially, but with very like very active involvement and engagement from our national consultants. So it will we would still want to adopt our old way of working, but I think we can bring in some of the new techniques and strategies we've done during this time into the new normal, or the better normal, even with the borders opening.
The better normal. I like that. It's a good way.
Yeah. Trying to be optimistic here.
There you go. I like. Well, unfortunately, we are running a little short on time, and I know everybody has things to do. We didn't get to all of the questions that were posed in the Q&A section. We're sorry about that, but we might be able to answer some of them and reply to you later on. So that pretty much wraps up the Urban Breakfast. So I really want to thank Lara and Chee for joining us. We had a great time.
Yeah.
I want to thank everybody who joined this morning, and especially the people who are watching on YouTube as well. Thank you for stopping by. Real quick before we go, we wanted to thank CDIA's funders who helped make all this work happen. The Asian Development Bank, there's a French name here, Agency Française.
Agence
Laura can probably say it better than me. Agence Française de Développement, is that right? Something like
You just
that. Okay.
Sorry.
Close. European Union, Federal Ministry of Finance of the Republic of Austria, German Cooperation, State Secretariat for Economic Affairs under the Swiss government. That's a long name. And one more time, for any city officials who want to apply for CDIA project preparation support, you can email cdia_info@cdia.asia. And I believe that email address is also in the chat, so you can see it there. And we do have another Urban Breakfast webinar next Thursday, October 15th at the same time, 11 a.m. GMT +8. Which is Philippines time. And at that Urban Breakfast, we'll talk to CDIA program manager, Untitled Chapter, and urban development expert, Brian Capati, about how to create a livable urban environment through sustainable waste management practices. Also, one more thing, CDIA has an interactive photo contest that's going on right now. And it's open to submissions until October 23rd. So you can see information about that project on CDIA's Facebook page. And what you do is you can take a photo of your city and you can edit it to show any improvements that you think might make your city more resilient and sustainable, and submit the photo to the contest via a Google form. It's very quick, it's very easy. So check the link in the chat box right now for more details on that contest. So Chee, Lara, one more time, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for everyone joining in as well.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Great. Thanks for stopping by, and hope everybody has a great day. All right. Take care. All right. That's it.